Vladimir Putin's prolonged invasion of Ukraine has become a complex, multifaceted conflict that now challenges his regime in ways few anticipated. In what began as a bid for swift territorial gain and political dominance, Russia is now entrenched in a costly war of attrition with no clear path to victory. For Putin, the stakes are high, and his options are narrowing as the Kremlin grapples with a series of profound military, economic, and social issues. In this report, we explore how Russia's extended conflict has drained its military, tested its economy, and left its leadership struggling to maintain public support and avoid escalation. As the war drags on, Russian troops are facing the consequences of extended deployment without sufficient rotation or relief. War correspondent Maxim Kalashnikov, who recently visited the combat zone, reported colossal fatigue among Russian soldiers on the front lines. According to his accounts, many troops who were mobilized months ago remain in the field, exhausted, demoralized, and physically spent. This fatigue is not just a psychological issue, it is a tangible factor that compromises combat effectiveness, morale, and cohesion within Russian ranks. The fatigue among soldiers is compounded by widespread shortages. Basic necessities, including food, medical supplies, and even winter uniforms, are often unavailable, leaving troops under-equipped and vulnerable. Reports from the front line suggest that soldiers are being sent back into combat before they have fully recovered from injuries, with commanders increasingly turning to half-treated soldiers due to a desperate lack of manpower. The physical and psychological toll of this strategy is mounting, leading to a deteriorating situation where soldiers are less able and willing to carry out their duties effectively. To sustain the war effort, Putin faces the option of initiating a new wave of mobilization. Yet this path is fraught with significant risks. According to various Russian sources, the Kremlin is aware that another mass draft could provoke widespread discontent and potentially spark civil unrest. For many Russian families, mobilization would mean seeing more loved ones sent into a conflict with high casualties and no clear resolution. Public sentiment, already strained by the war's high costs, could boil over if a new draft disrupts the lives of millions more. Furthermore, even if Putin were to order a large mobilization, the logistical infrastructure to support such an effort is severely lacking. Kalashnikov explained that equipping another 300,000 to 500,000 soldiers would be a logistical nightmare, as Russia currently struggles to adequately supply its existing forces. From uniforms and weapons to basic gear, Russia's military-industrial complex is operating at full capacity and would likely falter under the pressure of a major draft. Russia's reliance on costly private contracts and mercenary forces highlights its struggle to field a sufficient number of soldiers through traditional channels. However, the high cost of paying and sustaining these contractors further strains the Russian economy. This approach also lacks sustainability, as recruitment challenges persist, with fewer volunteers willing to join the fight. The fear of unrest from a full-scale mobilization keeps the Kremlin in a difficult bind. It needs troops to sustain the war effort, but any attempt to conscript large numbers risks triggering internal turmoil. The social landscape within Russia is shifting as public opinion grows increasingly weary of the so-called Special Military Operation, SVO. Recently, Alexander Borai, a member of the Russian parliament, delivered a speech that highlighted this discontent. Speaking at a congress in Moscow, Borai acknowledged that a majority of the Russian population does not actively support the war. According to Borai, many Russians wish to see an end to the conflict, seeing it as a costly and unnecessary burden. Borai's statements reflect a growing divide between the Kremlin's ambitions and the sentiments of ordinary Russians, who are not only fatigued by the constant news of casualties but are also facing economic hardship as a result of the war. Inflation, rising prices, and the reduction of social services have affected daily life, and many families are frustrated with the lack of a clear endgame. Borai's remarks also reveal a striking acknowledgement of a critical weakness within Russian society, a lack of unity in support of the war effort. The Kremlin's narrative of a united Russia facing off against Western aggressors has not translated into widespread popular support, with Borai estimating that only around 5.7 million Russians are directly involved in or support the SVO. This growing disillusionment has tangible consequences. The Kremlin's domestic propaganda efforts, which once galvanized public support, are now less effective as people grow skeptical of the government's promises and increasingly aware of the war's high human and economic costs. Public opinion polls suggest that trust in government institutions is waning, and more Russians are questioning the legitimacy and necessity of the conflict. As economic hardships mount and the casualty toll rises, Putin's ability to maintain social stability may weaken, creating conditions ripe for dissent. The war's economic toll on Russia is profound, as the country grapples with the costs of a prolonged conflict and heavy international sanctions. Russia's economy has been severely restricted by Western sanctions that target key sectors, including finance, energy, and technology. The consequences of these sanctions are becoming increasingly visible, with inflation rising and consumer prices increasing. As a result, many Russians are experiencing a decline in their standard of living. The costs associated with sustaining the war effort are straining the Russian state budget. According to estimates, Russia's military expenditures have reached unsustainable levels, with billions of dollars spent on maintaining operations in Ukraine. The depletion of military reserves and the need to replace destroyed or damaged equipment further compound this financial burden. Russia's efforts to circumvent sanctions and stabilize its economy have had limited success, and the Kremlin's options for generating revenue are dwindling. Furthermore, the impact of sanctions on Russia's energy sector, a primary source of revenue, has had far-reaching consequences. European nations, traditionally major importers of Russian oil and gas, have worked to reduce their dependence on Russian energy, leading to significant revenue losses for Russia. While Russia has sought alternative markets, the loss of its primary customers in Europe has placed additional strain on its economy. As revenue decreases and war costs escalate, Russia's economic outlook remains bleak, with few opportunities for recovery in the near future. One of the most significant challenges facing the Kremlin is a lack of unity and direction within its leadership. Despite efforts to project a unified front, there are indications that Russia's top political and military officials are struggling with conflicting priorities and objectives. This internal discord is reflected in the Kremlin's shifting narratives about the war, which have varied from claims of protecting ethnic Russians to denouncing Western interference. This lack of a cohesive ideology has led to confusion, not only among the public but also within Russia's political elite. The absence of a clear strategy or endgame has frustrated many within Russia's leadership, who are uncertain about what the Kremlin hopes to achieve in Ukraine. Without a well-defined objective, it becomes increasingly difficult for Russian officials to justify the war and to rally public support for a prolonged struggle. This ideological ambiguity has also eroded morale among soldiers, who often find themselves questioning the purpose of their mission. At the highest levels, Putin's administration appears divided on how to proceed. Some officials reportedly favor a more aggressive stance, advocating for escalated attacks to force a resolution. Others argue for a more cautious approach, fearing that any escalation could provoke a dangerous backlash from NATO or lead to further destabilization at home. This indecision has left the Kremlin without a coherent strategy, with officials offering conflicting messages that only serve to heighten confusion and frustration within Russia. The war in Ukraine has had significant geopolitical ramifications, particularly for Russia's relationship with the West. Far from dividing NATO and weakening Western resolve, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has strengthened alliances and galvanized a unified response. Western nations have provided Ukraine with advanced weaponry, training, and financial support, enabling it to mount a resilient defense. This military aid has proven instrumental in preventing Russia from achieving its objectives, forcing the Kremlin to reckon with a highly capable and increasingly confident Ukrainian military. Moreover, the war has spurred Western countries to reassess their energy policies, reducing reliance on Russian oil and gas and investing in alternative sources. This shift has deprived Russia of one of its most powerful tools of influence and has significantly impacted its revenue from energy exports. European countries, which were once dependent on Russian energy, have worked to diversify their supplies, further isolating Russia economically and diplomatically. The conflict has also reinforced the West's commitment to defending democratic values and opposing authoritarian aggression. Western leaders have framed their support for Ukraine as a stand against tyranny, positioning Russia as a pariah state. This unified stance has solidified the West's resolve to impose consequences on Russia for its actions, and it underscores the growing divide between democratic nations and authoritarian regimes on the global stage. As Russia's war in Ukraine stretches into another year, Vladimir Putin faces a series of daunting challenges that threaten the stability of his regime. Exhausted troops, A strained economy and a disillusioned public represent significant obstacles to Russia's ability to sustain the conflict. The Kremlin's indecision regarding mobilization and its lack of a coherent ideological narrative reflect a regime struggling to maintain control in the face of mounting pressure. Since early 2024, Ukraine has consistently countered Russia's full-scale invasion with effective, innovative tactics that have captured global attention. A particularly striking achievement is the Ukrainian armed forces' reported destruction of over 3,100 Russian tanks within the first 10 months of the year. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense estimates this immense toll translates to the elimination of approximately 102 tank battalions. An unprecedented loss for Russia in its long history of armored warfare. This remarkable success demonstrates Ukraine's operational strength and adaptability in combating a larger force. As the conflict unfolds, the destruction of Russian tanks has had implications beyond battlefield dynamics, significantly impacting Russia's finances. In one incident on May 12, 2024, dubbed by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense as a Day of Tankmen, Ukrainian forces reportedly struck down 31 Russian tanks in a single day, effectively wiping out an entire battalion, at an estimated $9 billion. This financial blow reflects the high cost of sustaining Russian tank warfare in Ukraine. This single day's expenditure equals the annual budget for 16 Russian cities, including Chelyabinsk, known for its environmental issues that remain unaddressed amid mounting war expenditures. This pattern of losses brings to light the difficult trade-offs Russia faces. While domestic issues continue to escalate, resources are redirected toward an increasingly protracted and costly conflict. For Ukraine, the war represents not only a defense of national sovereignty but also an extraordinary test of endurance and innovation, with each destroyed tank and successful counterattack reinforcing Ukraine's resolve. The scale of tank losses endured by Russia is staggering. Reports from Ukraine estimate that Russia has lost over 9.200 tanks since the conflict's inception, a figure that has raised questions about the sustainability of Russian armored forces in this protracted war. At the onset of the invasion, Russia's tank fleet was estimated to consist of about 3.300 operational units. Given the continued attrition, it appears that nearly all of the initial Russian tank force and subsequent reinforcements have been wiped out. Such a loss rate suggests substantial gaps in Russia's ability to maintain its tank corps, forcing Moscow to reconsider its armored warfare capabilities and battlefield strategies. This figure, while impressive, is subject to some debate among analysts. According to Sashka Brushman, a research fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, it's important to treat Ukrainian military reports on Russian tank losses as estimates. Brushman notes that what Ukraine's general staff includes in its tank tallies may differ from conventional definitions, potentially encompassing a range of armored vehicles. Ukraine's official figures provide daily reports on tanks, but separate categories for armored personnel vehicles, raising the possibility that both main battle tanks and lighter infantry fighting vehicles are grouped together. This ambiguity, however, does little to undercut the broader reality. Russian armored forces are experiencing losses that outpace their ability to resupply or repair, severely weakening their frontline capabilities. Beyond numerical strength, Ukraine's forces have shown exceptional adaptability in their tactics, which have proven effective even as they face superior numbers and resources. Ukrainian forces, particularly in contested regions like the KK region, have perfected the art of maneuver warfare. Rather than engaging in direct confrontations, Ukrainian troops often employ rapid maneuvers that disrupt Russian advances, reclaim strategic positions, and establish gray zones, buffer areas that deny Russian forces secure access. Ukrainian military officials credit much of their success to an evolving combination of counterattacks and logistical savvy. General Mikko Malamu, a former head of Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, described Ukraine's tactics during a recent interview on the YouTube channel Goriki Lave. In his analysis, Ukrainian forces have been able to maximize the impact of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, HIMARS, and M270 rocket systems. These high-precision systems allow Ukraine to target and eliminate Russian personnel effectively. Natural obstacles like the Siversky Donets River also play a vital role, complicating enemy movements and bolstering Ukraine's defensive lines. Through these combined efforts, Ukraine has created well-fortified logistical routes and defensive zones that make rapid Russian advances increasingly difficult. The strategic use of these tactics has yielded significant results. For instance, Ukrainian forces regularly disrupt Russian supply lines, forcing Russian troops to spend additional resources merely to sustain their positions. The physical and psychological toll on Russian forces has been compounded by these tactical maneuvers, underscoring the effectiveness of Ukraine's modernized, asymmetrical approach to warfare. Despite its efforts, the Russian military has struggled to maintain control in the KK region, an area that Moscow views as critical to its strategic interests. Putin had initially ordered his forces to expel Ukrainian troops from the KK region by October 1, 2024, but these orders have largely gone unfulfilled. Facing sustained Ukrainian resistance, Russian commanders have reportedly sought external assistance, turning to allies like North Korea for additional personnel. Ukrainian intelligence estimates that over 11,000 North Korean soldiers have been deployed to the KK region, reflecting Russia's growing reliance on foreign troops to bolster its front lines. However, the arrival of North Korean forces has introduced new logistical and operational challenges. Olena Gusanova, a researcher at the Friede Norman Foundation, points out that integrating foreign troops into Russian units can create problems with coordination, language, and morale. In her analysis, Gusanova explains that the deployment of a large number of foreign soldiers increases the likelihood of desertion or defection, especially in a conflict zone where conditions are harsh and morale is often low. While the North Korean troops provide Moscow with additional manpower, their effectiveness remains limited. For the Russian command, this situation necessitates additional security personnel to monitor and control these troops, further stretching Russia's already strained resources. A distinctive feature of Ukraine's defense has been its sophisticated use of drone technology. In many cases, Ukrainian drone units operate more like tech startups than traditional military outfits, drawing on civilian expertise to innovate and disrupt. As reported by the Wall Street Journal, several Ukrainian drone battalions originated as grassroots initiatives led by civilian tech enthusiasts. For example, the Clear Eyes Drone Battalion began as a civilian effort to monitor Russian troop movements using commercial drones, evolving into a well-equipped, specialized unit with its own engineering workshops, training courses, and field accommodations. One of the key figures in this transformation is Georgy Volov, a 37-year-old marketer turned battalion leader. Under Volov's guidance, the Clear Eyes Drone Battalion has embraced a startup mentality, focusing on rapid innovation and resource efficiency. Volov's team has modified outdated ammunition for drone use and even developed new types of drone-deployed weapons. He emphasizes that a single skilled pilot does not define success, rather, success depends on the collective ingenuity and resilience of the entire team. This unconventional approach, free from the rigid hierarchies typical of traditional military units, has proven highly effective in enhancing Ukraine's drone warfare capabilities. Drone technology has allowed Ukraine to strike deep into Russian-held territories, targeting supply depots, troop convoys, and even infrastructure. By leveraging drones in novel ways, Ukraine has created a substantial psychological advantage, forcing Russian forces to adapt to a form of warfare they are unprepared for. The Ukrainian government has supported these efforts by fostering a domestic drone industry. President Volodymyr Zelensky recently announced that Ukraine has the capacity to produce up to 4 million drones annually, a figure that underscores Ukraine's determination to remain at the cutting edge of drone warfare. The development of a self-sustaining drone industry represents a major step forward in Ukraine's defense strategy, offering a steady supply of drones capable of undermining Russian positions. While Ukraine has made significant strides in drone technology, certain limitations persist. The concept of drone swarms, where multiple drones can coordinate attacks as a unified group, is one area of active development. During a recent series of tests, Ukrainian companies presented advanced swarm technology, demonstrating the potential of drones to operate semi-autonomously and engage targets with minimal human intervention. This capability could revolutionize the battlefield by allowing Ukrainian forces to strike high-value targets more effectively while minimizing risks to personnel. However, some experts are cautious in their assessments. Valentin Badra, a military analyst, notes that FPV drones connected via fiber optics are effective in resisting electronic countermeasures but are constrained by their short operational range. Additionally, drones that rely on such connections may struggle in complex or heavily wooded terrain, where maintaining line of sight with operators becomes challenging. While drone swarming and FPV technology have immense potential, they are unlikely to be revolutionary in the immediate term due to these operational limitations. As the conflict between Russia and Ukraine enters its third year, the strategic choices made by both sides reveal much about the evolving nature of modern warfare. For Ukraine, the ability to adapt quickly and leverage both civilian and military expertise has enabled it to resist a numerically superior force. Russia, on the other hand, has been forced to contend with a host of unforeseen challenges, from sustaining its tank corps to managing the complexities of a multinational military presence in contested areas. Ukraine's resilience and innovative approach to defense have created a formidable deterrent to Russian advances. The high rate of Russian tank losses, combined with Ukraine's success in drone warfare, demonstrates that a well-coordinated, adaptable defense strategy can offset many traditional advantages in military strength. For Ukraine, the continued development of drone technology and tactical innovation will likely play a central role in shaping the conflict's outcome. The events of 2024 have underscored Ukraine's capacity to defend itself through strategic ingenuity and technological advancement. As the conflict continues, Ukraine's example could influence military strategy globally, showing that resilience, innovation, and adaptability can reshape even the most challenging battlefields. For now, Ukraine's success in blunting Russia's armored capabilities and repelling its advances serves as a powerful testament to the strength of a nation defending its sovereignty,